Hey, it's Rooted Black Girls with Farhan Afnan, representing everyday Black millennial women of multiple cultures, faiths, and from red tables to fresh princes. Here we are, right out with us.
Yes. Hey, Farah. Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
I am doing good. I've got my emotions out on my sleeve today because we're talking about Will Smith. We initially were going to put it in the other episode, but you know me, I love therapy and I have grown so much from it. So I'm like, no, Farah, we got to do a whole episode on this. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to really do a deep dive because he really let us in, especially with the Red Table Talk.
Yeah, Wilden took over the Red Table Talk by himself. Yes.
Can I say that homeboy was a little more vulnerable than we typically get with Jada.
You think so? Oh yeah, Jada don't spill her tea like that.
She don't, but she's masterful in the way that she does it because she
feel
connected, but she's not giving you much. So Will gave it to us, and I'm excited to really do a deeper dive around this.
Yeah. So I was super excited because, so for those of you guys who don't know what we're talking about, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was a very popular show in the early 90s, right? And it's one of those staples that we think in terms of Black culture, right up there with Martin and The Cosby Show. Super, super important when you're talking about Black families in media. Anyway, it's been 30 years and he did an anniversary show, which I loved. And if you know the show, if you know the show, there has been an ongoing feud with him and the original dark-skinned Aunt Viv, Janet Hubert. She was replaced due to some friction that was happening on the set, and she felt that a lot of that had to do with Will, and he himself acknowledged that he had a lot of ownership in how that unfolded. And there was just like a lot of unresolved issues from both sides, and both of them took the time to apologize. However, in the episode, so there was two parts. One, there was like the actual reunion where both Aunt Vivs got to meet each other for the first time. I didn't realize they had never met.
Epic. And did you recognize that the light-skinned Aunt Viv is married to T and Tamara's daddy from
I didn't know that. When they put the picture up, I was like,
hold up. My worlds are colliding right now.
So many connections. Yeah. And I really appreciated it. And of course, they talked about James, his last name is escaping me, and how, his passing was very hard for them and all of those things. So it was really like a nostalgic
James Avery,
Yes, thank you, James Avery. And how it was just really like a nostalgic moment. So that's on HBO. What is it called? HBO Max?
HBO Max, yeah.
Yeah, I got a free trial to watch it, y'all. I ain't even gonna lie. I was like, I am not missing this. And then, so what he does is, he brings the cast back. They have their conversation. They bring the original Aunt Viv, then they bring the new Aunt Viv, or the second Aunt Viv. And then Will and Janet Hubert have a heart-to-heart about their conversation, and like a heart-to-heart conversation, about like what's just transpired. And I was really surprised to find out that their feud had been public as recently as 2018. Like they were still going at it publicly. And I was like, oh.
And I think we can't say that. I think Janet Hubert was alone in the attack because Will Smith never participated. He didn't even watch her attacks in 2018. He participated initially when he was
younger. For sure. And he did interviews where he was saying some mean things. Yep. Yes. But later, for sure, once I think Will got even larger stardom and he had more to lose, he put thing on mute real quick.
And he stated that. He talked about how he was an afraid little boy and he felt like he had everything to lose. And Janet Hubert, and we'll talk about that because of family dynamics that she naturally played into that she didn't recognize, threatened Will. And so he had to do away with her, and we'll kind of talk about that some more.
Yeah, I love it, y'all. So y'all know I'm in my bag. I am super geeked about this. Okay, so so they start off the episode where Will is talking to his therapist, and he says that he's about to expose himself for the sake of helping others, and that vulnerability. And that's something that Farah and I actually have been talking about from the podcast perspective. And shout out to you guys, because you guys have been sharing some really touching messages. Farah, over the last couple of weeks, we've gotten some amazing messages from you guys.
I swear to you, we were completely humbled.
Yeah, made me cry.
Janet and I were sharing kind of personal messages we received in our own inboxes, and then Rooted Black Girls, about people's admiration and connection to the show. Yeah. And it kind of recentered our purpose around like, we knew why we were doing it. It was just like, okay, we want to know that these conversations are happening in this Muslim spectrum in this Muslim world that Black Muslims are having, Black women are having, Muslims are having. And so we wanted to do that, but to know that the message that you are hoping people receive, they're perceiving it.
Yeah.
Received it. I was like floored. I literally was crying. And
Yeah.
we were texting and finally talked on the phone, and we were like, she was like, you were playing it kind of cool. So I was playing it cool. I was like, girl, I was boo-hoo crying. I'm honored. We thank Allah, and we're glad, because when we talk about this, like, we want, especially with our connection between sharing the same sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, we want everything to be purposeful. We don't say something just to say it. And
just
so, wow, I was just so honored. And I hope we never ever take for granted, like, the people, and why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, and quite a few of them were from overseas, from Canada, from Europe even, which is so humbling. And so we appreciate you. If you're listening on podcast or any podcast platform, or if you're watching us on YouTube or Instagram, we thank you. We just want to take a minute to do that. But that really,
when we were having that conversation, remember we were talking about, like, recentering our purpose.
Yes.
We talked about vulnerability, and we both had to take, like, an oath around, like, okay, are we doing this? Like, more about our lives, because I think we're kind of like Jada in a way, where we're a little masterful around, like, letting you in, but not
really
allowing you, where we're more comfortable with people, but we know there's power in vulnerability
and sharing stories, for sure.
Sharing stories and knowing that you're not alone, and knowing that there's a spectrum to being Muslim, a spectrum to being Black Muslimas, Somali, Eritrean, that is larger than what you've ever imagined. So we hope that our stories and our perspectives can continue to do that further.
Yes, inshallah. So I thought it was so ironic, because we had just had that conversation, and Will dropped his episode, I think it was the next day. And he starts off with, sharing that he's going to expose himself for the sake of helping others. And I really thought that was awesome. And so I wanted to just, the take on that I wanted to take for the episode was just kind of like do like a step-by-step of like what actually transpired, and then for Farah and I each to share our own personal experiences with this. So just look at Farah's like wincing. She's like, oh, you're about to really do this? Yeah. So we're excited. Bear with us. And please be kind. Please be kind, because like we always say, we do not have the answers. We are growing, right? And we are continuing to make mistakes and learn from them. And so we invite you into this safe circle of trust, where we're reevaluating ourselves. And look at she's drinking water. Oh my God. I love it. Okay. So in the intimate conversation that Will and Janet Hubert have, and they haven't seen each other in 27 years. So it's very tense. You could see that, it's emotional. So she sits down, and Will arrives a few moments later, and he's like, how are you? And you can see just like that their guards like instantly kind of dropped, because there's so much suspense leading up to this. And so, from the very get-go, you can see that they've grown, both of them, that they're ready to have like this very, very personal conversation. I thought that was awesome. And so Aunt Viv actually kind of starts the conversation, and she holds no punches. She goes straight for it. She says, I just want to know why. I want to know why. Like, why did you do what you did? Because I lost so much and you guys went so far, right? And I think that's a very fair question for her to ask, right? But I think so many times when two people have different narratives of the same situation and different experiences, it's tough to jump in there and get started. And you really want answers, especially when there's a lot of hurt, right? And the first thing that Will did, which kudos to him, because this is how you know this man has been in therapy, is he didn't answer, because that could have been a baited question. Why did you do that? And in that moment, she's not really asking him, please explain to me your perspective of your justification of your actions. She's saying, I just still don't understand, and I'm still hurting. And for him to pick that up, and instead of answering that question of why, right, from his perspective, he then turns it and uses it as an opportunity to say, I don't know your story. It'd be really helpful if you told me your story.
When I heard that, I was like, he's a healed individual.
Okay. Listen.
Listening ears. And he's got big ones at that, mashallah, right? So he comes in, and he said this on the Red Table Talk. I'm going to like oscillate between the two, but he's like, when he's talking to his therapist on the Red Table Talk, and I have notes. He said, you listen to people. you know, and he said, then you give them and almost repeat exactly what they're saying, or you try to gain understanding around the subject, and then you validate the parts that you really connect with. And when I heard that, I was like, and that's what he did with Aunt Viv. He was Janet Hubert, you know, he was like, I want to understand more, because what I understand is I was a 21-year-old young man who was afraid.
A kid.
You know, I was a kid. And so that's how I came at you. And but now as a evolved individual, I want to understand more your position. I was like, and she wasn't healed yet. So he allowed her that space.
Allowed her the space.
He allowed her that space. And I thought that was so important.
And listen, as we're going to get deep, I'm going to be honest, right? As a child of an immigrant parent and having friends from the diaspora, right? And being of the diaspora, I think it is so important that when you're having these tough conversations, one of y'all has to be prepared to take what his therapist called psychological punches, okay? And for those of you guys who are not familiar with the show, basically what happened that led to the falling out was, you know, Will was very like jovial and joking, and she was a very accredited, very professional, established actor. Juilliard, okay? And so she, you know, but Will is like a rapper at the time who also does movie and acting and and he had like a jovial sense, and we'll get into like a little bit why later. And so Will ended up, you know, because she wasn't laughing at his jokes because of personal reasons, she was going through very hardship with an abusive relationship. She was pregnant at the time. And because she wouldn't laugh at his jokes, he felt uncomfortable by that, and he went and made comments to other folks who wouldn't know how to hold that information and said that she was difficult to work with. And listen, as a Black woman, right, in any professional space, the minute we are communicating in a way that makes others feel comfortable, whether it's justified or not, that difficult stamp is very hard to wash.
Very hard. And then we have to also say that she said, as a dark-skinned woman in Hollywood, period.
And this is 30 years ago. This is not today.
Exactly.
Today it would have been hard, but back then,
definitely. She was blackballed, she said. She was relegated as a difficult person to work with by the rising star in Hollywood. After Will, he was doing movies. He was doing Bad Boys. He was doing Independence Day. He is the it guy in Hollywood, and he's relegated this Black, classically trained woman as difficult. She's done. She's done for, you know?
Yeah.
Harbored a lot of pain around that.
Yeah. And I saw a lot of commentary online that, you know, she should have taken accountability for her actions, and women are always emotional and they need to check that shit at the door. And real quick, let's talk about that. Okay. Because as a culture, right, there is research that confirms there's a disproportionate expectation on women versus men. A woman can say the same, especially Black women. We're not even talking about, don't even get me started on hijabi women or women of color, right? But there's an imbalance in how women are perceived when they do the same thing from a professional standpoint. And here's the thing. In the episode, she acknowledged that she wasn't as communicative about what she needed and what she was going through, which was really big of her, right? But at the same time, okay, pregnancy is considered a disability because scientifically you're going through different things that a man could not understand. And Will, I really appreciate that, at least as an adult male who has had children, he said, and who has been married, could understand that, you know, it must have been incredibly difficult for her to be going through those things and still show up. So there's a balance. Yes, as a woman, you need to be responsible and aware of your environment, right? Of, you know, I am a professional, I'm at work, right? And you also have the choice of, do I want to be somewhere that's not going to give me space to have a tough day or be pregnant and be a little emotional, whatever the case may be. But there's also an acknowledgement that needs to happen from men, especially Black men, who fail to show up for Black women. And I understand that not all men are there, especially at his young age of 21. Like, God knows I was a mess at 21. So like, I have understanding and empathy, but I appreciate that he was able to, on his platform, share that, you know, he could have had her back. And he says at the end, I want to be a person who uplifts you, not someone that says dogs after you. And she said, I was bitten to death, right? And it resonated so much with me.
I know, but I thought about how Will was coming at her, and I was fascinated. It was a beautiful dance, like, and it was an authentic dance, you know, and you could tell he was trained around kind of his own emotional regulation, you know, and regulating himself. And I thought, and when he said it's thousands of hours of therapy, I said, oh, we're doomed. I was like, who is doing 1,000 hours of therapy for him to be so refined, an individual space, and allowing her to kind of spew. She is seething to this day, 27 years later. And I had a problem around that. I was like, wow, lady, like you are still.
She was still upset. She was still very hurt.
Very consumed by it too. And I was like, I don't know how much work she's done around releasing that hurt, right? Yeah. But Will, you could tell, did the work and allowed her that space. And I think sometimes women, when we're emotional or coming to what we feel like is a safe space, maybe with someone we're partnered with or a sibling, a male sibling, and we are a little more emotional, people don't receive that as well and try to match our emotion or try to come at us or say we're whining or crying, but he really took and validated her. He understood her and he tried to listen to her,
and acknowledge what she said and didn't justify, even though she and I've learned this being married. I learned this being married. Sometimes the question that I ask of my husband in a moment where I'm really hurt is not the freaking answer I want. Because if he answers that question, we're going to be fighting.
Yeah, do not answer that question.
Right?
You're really playing kind of this emotional, what's that? Jump out? I think he's just doing an emotional dance there, and he's working through that. And I was thinking while I was watching the episode, I thought about, there was like maybe 2 Thursdays ago, I just wasn't having a great day at work, but I still have to show up, right? And I'm seeing and working with 25 to 30 patients a day. And they weren't getting the best farah. I was like not having it. I was like, of course, taking care of each patient.
Of course.
Giving them great standard of care. But I was like, I couldn't kiki with them. I was like, out.
You have the capacity.
Out. I didn't have the capacity to do it. And to think, and that's just a day, right? But let's just say you're going through a hard time. You're going through an emotionally abusive relationship. You're pregnant. You're having to show up to work where people don't necessarily like you. And you don't feel like there's a sense of belonging. And you have to show up. And to then be kind of cut underneath by the number one star on the show, I was like, how do you show up? I'd be wanting to take a sabbatical for one bad day at work. I'd be like, I want to quit, I just want to go live in Turkey for like a year or 10 years.
And I think there's also like an unspoken expectation that women are supposed to always be soft and nurturing. I'm not your mama. I'm not your wife. I'm your colleague. Okay?
I'm your colleague.
Ooh, don't get started for that.
And I think, and we'll go now back to the Red Table Talk. We're kind of going back.
Yeah.
He's having this conversation with his therapist, and she's really tapping into, okay, there's a family dynamic that's playing right here where she made you feel like that little boy who was dealing with an abusive father, and how you kept the peace was by making your family members laugh. And you knew that if they were laughing, they weren't arguing or hurting each other physically or emotionally.
Yeah.
And so for him, when he saw Janet Hubert, who's this kind of stoic Juilliard trained woman, and he can't crack that shell for her, he felt unsafe in that place. And so then he said the dragon came out.
The dragon was awakened. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was super interesting. And even before he got to that point, what I thought was interesting is the way that it's being filmed, they're watching a segment of it, they're reflecting, they're watching a segment of it, they're reflecting. So his therapist says to him, she says, I see that she's taking psychological punches. Good for you that you're able to navigate them. Mm-hmm. But how are you feeling? And something that was so interesting that he said is, he's like, I just want to make everybody else feel good, which is how he arrived to the child complex that you were talking about. Yeah. And she said, that's interesting that when I'm asking you about your hurt, the first place that you go to is how you want to make others feel. And that's a defense mechanism. And that's, him taking apart that, like, okay, wow, the same way that shows up, as a parent and in my marriage, he even talks about him and Jada. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that in any family environment, which he had on the set originally before
relationships with women,
right? That he wants to make sure that he is safe and he feels most safe when he is laughing and making everybody else laugh, which I thought was super interesting, right? Yeah. And he even went as far to say, just like you were saying, that he created Will Smith as a survival mechanism. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think for me that resonates so much because a lot of people who know me personally will say that I'm ambitious and I'm like very all or nothing, right? And, through therapy, I figured out that when I was younger, as the oldest, I often got the most attention when I was achieving.
Yeah.
Right? You get good grades. Oh, I have attention. Because, there's a lot of younger siblings. I'm the oldest of 7, right?
Yeah.
And so, when I was being recognized by the community, right?
Uh-huh.
Then my parents are looking at me and I have their attention. And very quickly, I learned that if I wanted attention, my best bet was to figure out how to get others to pay attention to me for good things, right? By their measures, whether that's grades, whether that's, performances. So I'm not shy to get on a stage, because I realized that when my parents saw me on a stage for a good reason, in the masjid or whatever, right? A presentation, they honored me and they respect me, and I felt seen, and that carried me. And that's my safe place, which is super interesting. Right. And I just wanted to kind of ask you, like, Farah, like, is there any part of your personality? She's like, girl.
Well,
She's like, okay, is there any part, now that you've grown and you've been to therapy for a little bit, that you feel about your personality that has been like a defense mechanism in some regards from like your family life?
and I don't know if we've said it, but we all kind of turn into that inner child, that child when we don't heal the wounds of our past, and we don't recognize how a scenario or a dynamic can speak to that inner child
So
that
much.
didn't heal, So guys, I have to tell you guys, I rejoined therapy.
I was all for that. She's like, and I'm going back. I'm like, yes.
I'm going back. I'm ready. I think last year I just wasn't ready for it. And I'm ready to take that and examine myself and use that lens to do deeper work. Where last year I was just like, sis, I'm personally going through a difficult situation, and to mirror that and connect that with the therapy that was kind of like showing me that inner child that needed healing. It was too much. I was like, lady, I gotta quit. So I came back.
But you came back, and that's so big of you. I'm so proud of you.
And she told me that she made me feel comfortable around me leaving. She was like, the work that you've done, it's not going to recede. We're going to be able to pick that up when you're ready.
Yep.
And I feel that way. I feel like I've done some of my own reading.
Your own work. I was about to say, you've been reading. She's like,
I've been reading, I've been journaling, affirmations. I've tied dua back in, and that's something that I'm fearful around is dua. And so I've been having that conversational relationship with Allah, alhamdulillah. So I'm definitely starting on that journey. Inshallah, I can remain steadfast. So your question is a beautiful one, right? Because we were doing this work last week. Just a few days ago, maybe yesterday. Days are just so
blurring together.
You count them. But I realized that a lot, as the eldest child as well, as someone who's a high achiever, when I see that someone doesn't recognize the work or my value or my worth, I act like a child. I'll go immediately into like tantrum of sorts that I don't recognize at the moment. But when people don't value my contribution, because I feel like, I put in, when I do work and I really care about something, I put in a lot of work, a sweat equity on some other level, which is a trauma response around like, see me, look at me, high achiever. Acknowledge me. And I don't know if I necessarily got a lot of acknowledgement, because it was like, okay, that kid is good. Like
as the oldest?
Absolutely. As the oldest who had it together.
It's like, help me with your siblings.
Help me with your look at this one over here. You're a problem because this one's a problem. It's
your fault.
It's a period. So I remember even threatening my father and saying, maybe I should just get all F's one semester and then get straight A's again, so you can care.
Sis. I made that statement like, what do I got to do to get some attention out?
Attention, So then my value and my that inner child is connected to people seeing me as a high value person. And when you don't treat me in a high value state, I then whoosh, the dragon comes out.
Sure.
And so when I was hearing Will Smith, I was like, oh wow, like if you don't nurse that inner child and take care and validate that inner child and heal and take care and salve up that and wrap that wound and take care of it and make sure it heals, you will, when those dynamics come to play, when people don't see you as a high value person, you will lash out, And I'm pretty mild natured, I'm pretty chill, but when it comes to people not seeing my worth I'm out, you know? And so I saw that. It was a great mirror around like, wow, it just validated that I need to continue on this journey with therapy so I can heal that wound, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely.
And she even worked around like, well, you know, of course she wanted to dig deeper around like that feeling
Yeah.
of not being worthy, but then she was just like, okay, well, what does this tell you about yourself? And at the end I derived out, okay, if someone doesn't see my worth, then moving on, you know? But
Yes.
we did dig deeper around like what that feeling felt like in that
Yeah.
moment and how that dragging comes out.
Yeah.
But you gotta nurse and take care of that inner child. And so I did see that.
Yeah. I love that. And I gotta tell you again, I'm so proud of you. So proud of you. I'm a big proponent. If you guys can't tell, if you guys have been listening to us for any amount of time, you guys know I love therapy because it has changed me for the better, and it's still changing me. I'm still growing, and I have been able to see. You know how like they always say it's like it's always about your childhood. No, it really is. I could connect it back to like my work relationships and my marriage. I could also see it, when it came to like my friends and all these other things, and I really appreciated that. I was able to go through that, and I'm still learning, how to manage my triggers. Cause, and this is something else that his therapist said. She said that safety is actually an internal component.
Woo-hoo!
When she said that?
And girl, that is all up in my notes. I think I wrote here, she was like, success was Will's suit of armor.
Of course. And
Janet Hubert was picking at that like success because at the time he owed $2.8 million in back taxes, and he was coming off of like a mildly successful music career, but like it wasn't that great, you know. So yeah, for him, and it's interesting because I remember when I met someone, we were in a group among friends, and I was like, how are we having this conversation right now? This person asked me, what is love? And we were all sitting there, and one woman, her name was Anna Maria, she's awesome. She said, I'm an only child, so if I allow you into my space and I'm comfortable with you, that is what love is for me. And for me, I immediately said, security. And then I retracted it. It was very like gut wrenching. Like I just said it, and then I redacted it because it wasn't received well,
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was just, I don't know. I think specifically for this person that I was speaking, it wasn't received well, and I wanted to be like liked by that person at that moment, And so I took it back, but I was like, no, security and safety are exactly what I need, to feel comfortable. But then what the therapist said, she was like, security is an inside game. And I was like, whoa, turn it off. What do you mean? I feel inside game. Yeah. Wallahi, that blew my mind because I'm still wrapping my mind around like, what do you mean security is an inside game? You know?
Because and then Will explained it too. Will said, he said, safety extends to money. He said, it's not about just the physical harm of like what his father used to do to his mother and how he couldn't protect her and how that ended up manifesting in his other relationships with his wife and even to his daughter at some component. He said that the way he sees it, and I think a lot of us do this. I myself do this, and I'm always struggling with the balance of safety extends to money. And he said, if you have money, women won't cheat on you, because he was also going through a breakup where he was devastated because all Will ever wanted was a family, right? And he says, and if I'm rich and I'm famous and if I'm the best at what I do, then no one will be mad at me. People will love and respect me, and I will be safe, right? And so to your point, I agree 100%. And I think especially like as East Africans as well, I think sometimes of immigrant parents, there's a pressure to establish not only yourself, but establish it for your whole family. And it's like, you have to set yourself up for success in that way, because this is what's going to fix it. And a lot of people and a lot of rich people will tell you, I wish everybody could get $10 million or whatever amount of money they think is going to make them happy, because they will be in this big house miserable. And it's been,
and he said that money never
does
took care of that situation for me, that level of security, and he thought it did and would, I was so fascinated by this. This conversation was magical. She then went into saying how do you take a psychological punch, and then right after he's like in therapy with her, and it was so beautiful that he allowed us to watch. Like, let me tell y'all, and I think healed people are beautiful, right? And everyone's beautiful, but like I want to say people first, but as I merge into Black men, when you're healed, y'all are like it. Like
It's
there
a game
are
changer.
no obstacles when you are healed individuals. Do the work. You know what I mean? We all need to be doing the work, but there's something about a healed Black man that is magical, mashallah, and that can move mountains.
It resonates to the whole community. His family first, workplace second, and now even you're seeing it in Will. The content this man is putting out is literally inspiring conversations across generations, across communities. It's revolutionary.
It is. And it takes, I've always said, and I've said it so many times, Black love is revolutionary.
Absolutely.
And I think when
you have said that.
I feel so strong about this. When you have like two healed individuals, or not even I want to say in the active healing people who are committed to healing, right?
Absolutely.
Because there are things that are going to come up in your life all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to meet people who aren't in a great state, people who are better than you in a grander emotional state, and you just don't. Life is so relational, and if you're in a healing space, you can hear and take these psychological punches and know that they are not real, you know. And that's what he says. He goes, she's like, how do you take psychological punches? And he was like, it's not real. These punches are not real. Someone you love is hurt and they're trying to feel better. Get it out. So I was just
so important.
Wow,
I love that.
Yeah. And then he goes, it's their turn to tell their story. Don't use your story to give understanding. So give them that space to kind of let it out because you love them, and then he went into seek first to understand and then to be understood. And I was like, ooh, sir, he was giving it to me.
She said, that's a PhD right there. If you really can master that, and let me tell you, it's hard. Let me tell you, it's really, really hard because even as somebody who is pretty comfortable with understanding my triggers, I'm still learning how to show up, right? Yeah. In intense conversations with people who you've been hurt with, it is a lot. And it's I'm still working on, if we both were in a situation and I was hurt by what you did, right? When I do my work, I can hear your hurt and not equate it to my value, my wrongness, and my shame, right? Yeah. Like if I do something to you and I've hurt you, I can hear you and generally empathize with, wow, my statements or my actions made you feel this way, without admitting without accepting guilt. I can accept responsibility without being wrong. Right. And I think so many people, myself included, struggle when we're hearing somebody say, like, so for example, let's say like at work, right? If someone says like, I really felt like you don't play your role because you're not more timid or you're not quieter, whatever the case may be. And I could feel really offended, like, and I don't understand how your misogynistic ass don't, make space for women, right? But I can hear that and say like, I could have empathy, right? And when I do my own work, when someone else has an experience of me that's very different from how I see myself, I can give them space to express that without taking that on. I can take accountability. I can take responsibility without feeling wrong. And when you can do that, it levels the playing field so that they can then calm down. They feel heard. And then you can give yours. You can say, I hear you and I understand. Versus like, if someone says, I feel like you were rude, and I'm like, I wasn't rude. I was what she said in the episode. She said it's two competing narratives versus common understanding of like, this is what happened, this is my take, this is your take. I understand more about how to love and respect you, right? And I just thought that was super, super important. And I love that. I love that. And it's hard because in the process of someone else sharing their authentic truth, their story, they can hit a button, right? Because if, let's say, Janet Hubert would have touched on, and you have a wife too, and you almost got a divorce from her, that could have been a trigger where he could have lost his ability to listen, and it would have been understandable. And I think that's what I've learned the most out of like my marriage and very close, immediate family relationships is that when someone steps on one of my triggers, when I've done the work and I'm present, I can say, okay, they didn't mean to do that most likely. Or if they did it purposely, they're doing it because they're desperately trying to get the love and understanding that they need. And if I can step back and just stay calm for a minute, I can realize that they're not ready to hear from me yet. If I have the capacity, I need to listen. And if
Yeah.
I don't, I walk away. And that's what she said. She said, if you're unable to take that punch and you're threatened by their narrative, then you need to walk away, do your own work, and then come back. And I was just like, oh, she's reading me for film.
Literally, my therapist, now I'm telling
Yeah.
you how deep, she was like, let's work on like emotional triggers and how you can self-regulate at that moment, you know? And that's it. She said
So
that. She goes,
important.
you are the only person who can regulate your triggers.
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
it's like you're going to be triggered. You're relational to everything in the world. And
Yeah.
so I have been a part of that where I have tried to trigger people, you know, when I've gone into that dance, I don't do it often, you know, very protective in that way. But like when I do get there and I'm not getting that reaction from you, you know, you want to push on these people's triggers so that they can kind of respond and kind of do that dance with you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, I don't think it's a personal game. It's not, you really do care about people. And I'll say another story with me and my sister. You know, I made a joke. She's on the job hunt with COVID. You know, she decided to kind of really stand out on faith and try to get into the space that she prefers to be than where she was previously.
Oh, cool.
I made a joke and was like, how does that not working life feel, you know? And I didn't know it was a trigger. I was like jealous. I was like, I wish I could take this time off and not be working, you know?
If I would be in Turkey, she keeps joking about this. She really would be.
Tanzania, Turkey, something.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that that was a trigger for her. And she came in and really went like rattler, like, fam, you want me,
You
right?
know. Yeah.
And I was like, and back in the day, I would have been like giving it to her back, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But this time I allowed space. And I was just like, oh, okay, Ashley, like, I really do apologize. I apologize.
Yes.
I was like, is this a tough time for you? And then when she realized that I wasn't coming at her, her walls just
dropped
completely. They dropped.
Magic.
And it was an emotional space for her because as someone who's connects her, you know, I don't want to speak for my sister, but for someone who sees working and being a contributor and working hard as
valuable to her,
integral to how she values herself, it's tough for her to not have a job right now.
Yeah. And you unknowingly, you know, in a joking manner, of course you didn't mean it for your sister,
exactly
on that and we're, oh, that's so beautiful that you're able to
I was like, wow, it was so like, it was such a small moment. I called her after work. We were FaceTiming, my preferred way of communicating with people.
I don't want to see you.
Driving and FaceTime. I don't know why I love it. I know. It's not.
No, you're good.
You know, I really was like, wow, this has nothing to do with me, bruh. You know, and back in the day, I went right back at her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not someone who really starts something, but I'll finish it, you know? And I'm like, that's not
like,
cute.
You're very good with it. You'll finish it.
I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Someone does something, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna get handled. Like, I'm gonna live up Olivia Pope this situation, you know?
No, for sure.
And so that dragon, I think, really lives inside all of us, right? We all have these emotional triggers from childhood traumas in general, that if we don't decide to heal and work on, will show up in some way, in some aspect in your life. And you have to be committed to doing the work. And Will's talking about 1,000 hours, bro. Like, it's not gonna happen overnight.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen overnight. And something else that I want to call out, right? Because he did say, you know, listen to their story with no debate. And he also said that their story is not a threat to you, which I thought was super important. But the other thing is to give yourself grace, because your triggers are there. And I want to be really clear about this. Your triggers are there because of real experiences you had as a child or in a relationship or with someone. And they're not make-believe. You don't pick them up on the street, you know, just out of nowhere. That's real lived experience. And so it's super important to recognize that while they might not be your experience, that may be really significant to the other person, right? And I think for me, you know, it's a matter of giving myself understanding that if that worked for me in the past, if overachieving as a child was successful, but I now as an adult feel burnt out, I feel pressured, I feel unhappy, I feel unstimulated, I feel unseen because I'm working in the machine, right? I can give myself permission and grace to say, this suited you in the past.
Doesn't serve me anymore.
and you did it to survive.
Yeah.
It doesn't serve me anymore. And I can release it without being wrong, without being, shamed or, feeling bad. I could say, I can choose to make a change. And I think when you do that for yourself, you can give that to other people. You know what I mean?
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a big, like,
And it's hard. It's hard because I could know that, and still when it happens in my life, I still mess it up. I'm not even gonna lie to you. You know what I mean? So
that was a big moment for me. Like, you extend grace to others when you can extend it for yourself.
yes.
And wow. Like, and then when people are a little harsh around extending grace, it's because you're harsh on yourself, most likely.
Yes. Most likely, yeah.
And the relationship you have with yourself is the formative one that you then release to the relationships you have with other people.
Yes.
Ooh.
And when you can reestablish control, when people have done things to you when you were a child or when you were younger and you didn't have control or the vocabulary or the tool set to be able to say, like, to set boundaries or to communicate you were hurt, right? When you do that as an adult, right, then you can respect when other folks do it as well. You know what I mean?
Girl, are we starting to understand the people who say no, period?
Still working on that one.
I don't mess with them. That one. I still need some more hours in therapy.
Here's the thing. I think in terms of that, really quickly, in terms of that, no is a complete sentence, but I have made a choice that what I need in my life is people who are going to hear me. And because of my childhood, I don't respond to when I say I need something, people go, hell no, fuck you, da, 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 whether intentionally or not.
Yeah.
So I respect it. If you say no, period, and I'm like, oh, is that it? And you're like, yep. And I'm like, okay, cool. I respect that. And I will give you space, but I know that don't work for me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, we're there.
We've gotten through our toxicity.
Yeah, a little bit.
Still working on it, y'all.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. But like if you haven't watched the Will Smith Red Table Talk, watch it immediately. The whole reunion was nostalgic.
Yes.
And also, I want to touch base. Apparently, my brother called me today and he was like, hey, did you notice that Alfonso didn't hug Janet Hubert when she came on the main set? And apparently they have he's done a stand-up show about her.
I didn't know that.
Wild things about him, called him like a used tampon for Will. Oh no! So my brother told me that, and I was like, dang, there are sometimes relationships where the bridge has burned. And the healthy thing to do is to move forward. Like, there's no need to have a conversation, it looks like,
Yeah.
And so I thought there were so many things going on that set,
Yeah.
and I'm probably going to rewatch it.
I'm going to rewatch it.
A favorite.
Listen, if you haven't listened, any episode where Will is on the red table, I have learned so much. I have learned so much from him and Jada, talking about parenting to their relationship. Honestly, and then even having his mother-in-law there and his child to reflect so many different perspectives. I've learned so much. I highly, highly recommend you guys check out their stuff. It's really great.
Beautiful people are people who are doing the work, to heal themselves. And so we would implore you that when you are ready to take that step, and that it's a journey that, I have a friend who, instead of doing therapy, she wanted life coaching. She didn't want to arrive to the answer. She wanted someone to tell her the answer. So it's like, it looks like different things for different people. There's beauty in that, And I was like, girl, I need it all. I was like, give me your old life coach's number.
I'll take all the help I can get.
So it looks like different things, but we're in this time where time has slowed down completely. Mm-hmm. And if you were not looking at yourself and really figuring out, what your purpose is and why you do the things that you do, then you're really missing this beautiful opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. I think we're going to leave it there, Farah. I think we definitely check out the episode, review, leave us some comments. Shout out to you guys. Also, if there's any other topics you want us to cover, please don't be shy. Send us a DM. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace.
Bye, y'all. Peace.